India and China held their first ever bilateral meeting in over 5 years. And while many are tonight either skeptical or rejoicing by the fact that the talks have begun, I, for one, am a total realist and a pragmatist vis-a-vis China, which is why I believe that while it is a good thing that India and China are finally talking, we must also never forget that there is a lot of work to be done to restore the balance. Of course, to those who have minutely studied the statements crafted today will understand that India has not taken the bait this time. India has made it amply clear that until and unless there is strict adherence to the disengagement along the LAC, no normalization talks can proceed. This was also reflected in the statement of the Indian Army's chief yesterday. But the most important takeaway for the Chinese side from this bilateral meeting has to be the fact that this is not the same country they are dealing with whom they had met in Mamalapura in 2019. This is a country whose Prime Minister is in his third term and who has seen through over a decade of first-class diplomacy, from free trade agreements to surgical strikes to regional coalitions, and not just leading but winning over support from all sides in a multipolar world. Which is why it is in the best interest of China to go back to the pre-Galwan situation in India for its own sake. Because in a matter of just 3 to 4 years, India will become the third largest economy in the world, and it is just going to be just behind China and the US. Ladies and gentlemen, therefore, I believe that at this time it is important for the Chinese to look at what they need to know. Now that we have gone more than half the distance, what do the Chinese need to do? First, the Chinese need to close the trade gap. They need to make serious efforts towards it. Secondly, the Chinese need to stop encouraging terrorism through Pakistan, which is their strategic asset, but they need to know that it is not something that India is going to take lightly. We have already said very clearly to the Pakistanis that talks and terror cannot go hand in hand, which is why if China wants friendship with India and, as the Prime Minister said, have a mature relationship with India, it must stop encouraging the Pakistanis to carry out terror attacks on our soil. Thirdly, they must stop taking a stand at international forums, which is not just anti-India, but which is pro-terrorism, like doing everything possible to protect Masood Azhar. These are pinpricks in the relationship that the Chinese should be very, very conscious that if they want to have a better relationship with India, which is in Asia's interest, which is in global interest, then they need to stop doing those kind of things. The Chinese need to come to terms with India's growth. I think that is the fundamental flaw in the way the Chinese look at India. They must realize that just as they grew at a massive pace in the early 2000s until a few years back, similarly, India's growth, which is pegged at 7-8%, is going to take India to being a 10 trillion economy, 20 trillion economy, 30 trillion economy, and maybe a 40 trillion economy plus by 2047. These are realities, and the Chinese must come to terms with it. Having a hostile relationship with India at this stage will only damage China's interests in the medium to long term. That is why I'd just like to begin by saying once again that the Chinese need to be very mature, not aggressive, and realize that we've gone more than half the distance. It is their turn now to respond.